AI just broke the SaaS business model. For almost 20 years, one piece of business advice seemed impossible to argue with. Never build software you can simply rent. Building your own customer database, accounting platform, or project management system sounded ridiculous. It was like constructing your own power station because you disliked the electricity bill. You would need developers, you would need servers, security, testing, and maintenance, and you would need someone permanently responsible for making sure the entire thing did not collapse on a Monday morning. So companies rented instead. They rented customer relationships from Salesforce. They rented creative tools from Adobe. They rented workplace communication from Slack. They rented project management from Atlassian. And increasingly, they rented much of the machinery running their companies from platforms like ServiceNow. Each subscription looked manageable. $20 here, $50 there, a few $100s for a more serious business tool. But spread those payments across hundreds or even thousands of employees, and software quietly becomes one of the largest expenses inside a modern company. For years, businesses accepted this. The alternative was worse. Then, artificial intelligence began changing the calculation. Software that once required an entire engineering department could suddenly be prototyped by a small team. Tasks that once required 10 employees could now be handled by 3 employees working alongside AI agents. Those agents did not always need to open software through the same interfaces humans used. The subscription companies were still collecting money, but underneath them, something fundamental had started to break. The business model that built modern software depended on one simple assumption. More work would always require more human users. More employees meant more software seats. More software seats meant more recurring revenue. AI is making that assumption increasingly difficult to defend. But shrinking workforces are only one part of the problem. Customers are also growing tired of confusing prices, difficult cancellations, forced bundles, automatic renewals, and software designed to make leaving harder than joining. At the same time, AI coding tools are making it easier for companies to build their own internal alternatives. AI assistants are beginning to sit above existing software, potentially reducing companies like Salesforce and Adobe to invisible infrastructure. So this is not simply a story about whether subscriptions disappear. It is a story about why the subscription model became so powerful, how software companies gradually abused that power, how AI is weakening the connection between headcount and revenue, and why the entire industry may be forced to change what it sells, how it charges, and who ultimately controls the customer. The uncomfortable question is no longer whether software companies will keep making money. Many of them will. The question is whether the business model that built them can survive a world with fewer human seats, more AI agents, and customers who are finally beginning to push back. To understand how we arrived here, we need to return to a time when software was not something you subscribed to. It was something you owned. In the 1990s, companies purchased software through large, upfront deals. They installed it on their own computers, then they managed the systems themselves. The arrangement was inconvenient for everyone. Customers had to deal with servers, installations, updates, and backups. Software companies had a different problem. They could spend years building a product, make enormous amounts of money during a major release, and then wait while customers continued using the same version for years. Successful software did not produce steady income. It produced waves. Then, in 1999, former Oracle executive Mark Benioff helped launch Salesforce. Its promise was simple, but radical. Business software would no longer live inside the customer's building. It would live on the internet. Customers would open it through a browser and pay continuously for access. This model became known as software as a service, or more commonly, SaaS. For customers, it removed much of the pain of installing and maintaining software. For software companies, it created something far more valuable: recurring revenue. Instead of asking customers to purchase every new version, companies could charge them every month or every year. Software had discovered rent. Investors loved this model because recurring revenue made the future unusually predictable. Imagine 2 software companies earning the same amount of money this year. The first company sells one-time licenses. At the start of next year, it must persuade customers to buy again. The second company sells subscriptions. If most customers stay, much of next year's revenue is already waiting. That predictability is enormously valuable. And software companies discovered an especially powerful way to grow. Acquire a customer. Move its important data and workflows onto your platform. Charge for every employee using it. Then grow alongside the customer. If a business expanded its sales team from 100 people to 200, it needed more Salesforce seats. If it hired more designers, it purchased more Adobe licenses. If it added more departments and workflows, the software bill grew with them. The customer's headcount became the vendor's revenue, and leaving became more difficult over time. A CRM system might begin as a simple list of customers. Eventually, it contains years of sales history, automations, reports, integrations, and internal processes. Replacing it stops being a normal purchasing decision. It becomes corporate surgery. Adobe discovered the same power when it moved Photoshop, Premiere, and its other creative tools into Creative Cloud subscriptions. Previously, a designer might buy one version of Photoshop and continue using it for years. Under the subscription model, access continued only for as long as the payments continued. Financially, the transformation was extraordinary. Adobe no longer had to wait for designers to purchase the next version. It could collect recurring payments month after month. Soon, the model spread everywhere. Music became a subscription. Movies became subscriptions. News became a subscription. Food, fitness, cloud storage, email marketing, and workplace communication all became subscriptions. Even products that did not naturally feel like recurring services began searching for ways to create recurring payments.
Printer that I own, my printer that I own, with ink that I bought, purchased, and paper. And I can't print without a subscription plan. The concept of having to have a subscription plan to print in your own home from the printer that you own that already has ink and paper in it, they remotely shut off my printer. Printer that I own, my printer that I own, with ink that I bought, purchased.
The software industry had found one of the most reliable money-making machines ever created. But something important changed along the way. Subscriptions originally succeeded because they made software easier to access. Gradually, many companies began using them to make customers harder to release. The sign-up process became effortless. The cancellation process became a maze. A customer could begin paying with one click. Canceling might require navigating several pages, rejecting multiple discounts, answering questions, or contacting customer support. Some services advertised a monthly price, while quietly placing customers into annual commitments. The payment arrived every month, but the obligation lasted for a year. Leaving early could mean paying a cancellation fee. The subscription looked monthly. The commitment was not. Features that once came together began splitting across increasingly expensive tiers. A customer might discover that the one function they actually needed was only available inside a professional, business, or enterprise plan. Prices could rise gradually because leaving was even more expensive. This became especially visible in creative software. A photographer may dislike Adobe's pricing, but years of Photoshop files, Lightroom catalogs, presets, plugins, and professional habits make leaving difficult. A company may dislike Salesforce, but its customer data, integrations, reports, and sales processes may already be embedded inside the platform. This is known as vendor lock-in. Sometimes, lock-in is simply the result of a useful product becoming deeply integrated into a company's work. But lock-in can also become a deliberate strategy. Make the product easy to enter, make the customer dependent on it, then make departure expensive, confusing, or disruptive. The most aggressive subscription companies are not merely selling continued value, they are monetizing the cost of escape. Bundling created another version of the same problem. A customer might only need 2 applications, but still have to pay for a much larger package. A team might need one advanced function, but the entire organization must move on to a more expensive plan to access it. The company can then describe the bundle as additional value, even when customers never use most of what they are paying for. And because each individual subscription seems small, the full cost often remains hidden. A company may have hundreds of employees paying for overlapping products purchased by different departments at different times. Some accounts belong to employees who have already left. Some are barely used. Some duplicate tools the company already owns. This is often called SaaS sprawl. It is one reason finance departments have started examining software bills far more aggressively. The subscription economy trained customers to focus on the monthly price instead of the lifetime cost. $20 does not feel expensive. $20 every month for 6 years is a different purchase. For a long time, software companies could tolerate this growing frustration. Customers had few realistic alternatives. They might resent the subscription, but rebuilding the product internally was still far too expensive. Then companies began adding artificial intelligence. At first, AI looked like another feature that could be placed behind a more expensive plan. Instead, it may be forcing the entire machine to redesign itself. Imagine a customer support company employing 1,000 people. Each worker uses a support platform, a communication tool, a knowledge base, and a CRM system. Then, the company introduces AI. The AI reads incoming questions. It searches internal documents. It drafts responses. It categorizes requests. It updates customer records. Humans remain important, especially for difficult or sensitive cases. but each employee can now handle far more work. The company may no longer need 1,000 support workers. Perhaps it needs 700. From the customer's perspective, that is exactly what AI was supposed to achieve. The company becomes more efficient. But from the perspective of a software company charging per employee, that efficiency creates a contradiction. The better the product becomes at reducing human labor, the fewer subscriptions the customer may need. The software succeeds. The pricing model suffers. For most of the history of software as a service, employee growth and software growth moved together. More salespeople meant more CRM seats. More developers meant more project management accounts. More designers meant more creative licenses. AI weakens that relationship. A company can now produce more work while employing fewer people. And it may employ digital agents that do not resemble normal users at all. One employee might supervise several agents. One agent might complete thousands of tasks. A seat no longer tells us much about how much value was created. That is why the language around software pricing is beginning to change. The old model asks one question: how many people use the software? The emerging model asks a different question: how much work did the software perform? That sounds like a small pricing adjustment. It is actually a change in what software companies believe they are selling. Traditional software was a tool. Photoshop did not create an advertisement by itself. A designer used Photoshop to create it. Salesforce did not contact every customer by itself. A salesperson used Salesforce to manage the relationship. AI software increasingly promises something different. It does not merely help a person perform a task. It attempts to perform part of the task itself. An AI agent can answer a support request. It can qualify a sales lead. It can summarize a meeting. It can generate an image. It can investigate a technical problem. Once software starts completing work, customers begin judging it like labor. Did it resolve the ticket? Did it generate a qualified lead? Did it save time? Did it reduce costs? This makes the old fixed-price subscription harder to maintain. Traditional software was relatively cheap to provide to an additional user.
Once the product was built, adding another account often cost the vendor very little. AI is different. Every response, generated image, processed document, and autonomous action consumes computing resources. A light user may cost almost nothing. A heavy user paying the same monthly price might run thousands of expensive tasks. The revenue is fixed, the cost is not. This is why AI products increasingly use credits, usage limits, and additional fees. Customers still want predictable bills. Vendors want revenue that rises when expensive AI systems are used more heavily. The simplicity of $20 per user per month begins to disappear. Software starts looking less like renting an office and more like consuming electricity. You may pay for access, but you also pay according to how much power you use. AI is also changing the old argument between buying software and building it. For decades, purchasing Salesforce or HubSpot was the obvious choice. Building a serious alternative internally was enormously expensive. A real enterprise platform required database engineers, designers, security specialists, testing, integrations, and permanent maintenance. Most companies could never justify it. But most companies also use only a small portion of the features inside a large enterprise product. They may need a customer list, a sales pipeline, email tracking, several dashboards, and a few approval rules. Years ago, even rebuilding that reduced version was too expensive. AI coding tools are beginning to change the calculation. They do not make software engineering effortless. Companies still need people who understand the business, people who inspect the code, people who secure the system and maintain it over time. But AI can reduce the time required to create ordinary interfaces, connect databases, and automate internal workflows. A customer does not have to rebuild all of Salesforce. It only has to rebuild the small part it actually uses. It does not need to recreate the entire supermarket. It only needs to recreate the 5 aisles its employees visit. For financial systems, cybersecurity, and heavily regulated operations, building internally remains risky. Reliability matters, compliance matters, support matters. But for dashboards, approval systems, and smaller internal tools, the old rule is no longer absolute. Never build what you can buy. That used to be obvious. Now it depends. And even when customers do not replace their major software platforms, the possibility gives them more negotiating power. This creates an awkward reversal. Subscription companies spent years making themselves difficult to leave. AI is now reducing the cost of building the exit. There is an even deeper threat. Companies may continue paying for existing software while employees gradually stop opening it. Think about a normal workday. An employee checks Slack. then Salesforce, then Jira, then Gmail, then a company dashboard. Each product owns a small piece of the employee's attention. Now imagine that the employee opens one AI assistant and says, "Find the customers most likely to cancel. Summarize their recent complaints. Create a follow-up plan. Assign each task to the correct team." The assistant gathers information from the CRM system, support platform, email system, and project management tool. The underlying products may still be necessary. They store records, they control permissions, they connect to other systems, but they become less visible. The AI layer owns the relationship with the user. The software underneath becomes infrastructure. This does not mean companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow disappear. Their trusted data, permissions, and workflows may become even more important when AI agents are making decisions. So, are subscription businesses dead? No. Major software companies still generate billions of dollars in recurring revenue. Businesses still prefer predictable costs. Software companies still prefer recurring payments. The subscription is not disappearing, but the traditional software as a service subscription is losing its position as the automatic answer to every pricing question. For 20 years, the industry charged according to the number of humans allowed to use a product. That made sense because humans perform the work. AI agents complicate that arrangement.